all of us are capable of doing extraordinary things in our lives if we're willing to go after it. I was nearing the age of 30, and I was someone who just really had no passion in their life or no drive. And in very short order, I quit smoking, changed my life 180 degrees, and went into this other world and discovered a person that was within me that I never knew existed for 30 years. Someone who could do these crazy feats of endurance, like run 4,500 miles across the Sahara Desert or trek to the South Pole unsupported, or these sorts of things. And here I am, 45 expeditions later, and I'm still loving what I do. And I think, if anything, I've learned on this journey that we spend a lot of time in our lives talking ourselves out of trying new things, out of taking chances. And then one day time runs out and we say to ourselves, what if? What if I took that chance? What if I, went after something in my life? Who knows what would have become? I didn't choose cancer. It chose me. But I wasn't going to allow it to define me, nor was I going to allow it to tell me what I could and couldn't do. I start, racing mountain bikes and I'm getting fitter. And then I start running ultra marathons. And then through running ultra marathons, I met two friends and we ran, running was becoming my greatest teacher. I was going around the world doing these ultra marathons and meeting new people and going to exotic places that I'd never been before. And I met two friends, and we had this idea of running across the entire Sahara Desert. So from one end to the other. And through 6 degrees of separation and serendipity is what I've always said when I give these presentations. Matt Damon hears about this thing and he's like, hey, let's make a movie out of this. And so a movie gets made out of the three of us running across the Sahara Desert. They have an Academy Award winning director. Pearl Jam and U2 are contributing music to the film. It's this whole crazy thing. And I learned through the expedition of running 4,500 miles a few key things. Number one, the world is an incredible place, and we have a lot to learn from people who are living lives very differently than us. And so, through adventure, I'm learning when I barely got out of high school. Now I have a voracious appetite for wanting to learn, and it's coming through an adventure. So, we finish the run across the Sahara Desert. We get to the Red Sea, 111 days, running 40 miles a day every day. And we get to the Red Sea, and the three of us have our hands above the Red Sea. And I look at my hand, I glance at our three hands, and I think to myself, wow, my hand looks the same as these other two guys. I'm the same as these guys, like these two champion ultra runners. And it dawned on me in that moment, another one of the important points I learned about running across the Sahara. All of us are capable of doing extraordinary things in our lives if we're willing to go after it. When we put our hands in the Red Sea, I was instantly committed. I was like, this is my life now. Like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to go and see the parts of the world that are the furthest, remotest places that I can learn from, but also be in those places when they're most, if you will, deserty or arctic-y, right? I want to be in the Arctic in winter. I want to be in the desert in summer. And so that's how it all began. When I quit smoking, I'll never forget being able to run up a set of stairs and not being winded, and then having to catch myself and say, wait a second. Yeah, climbing stairs used to be hard, but you forget because you're living the existence that you're in the moment. So you kind of have a short-term memory when how you goes to how you feel. So for me, I'm 56. I was chalking it up to I'm just getting older. You really don't know, but you start to accept the situation that you're in. It wasn't until driving somewhere and forgetting where I was. Like, I mean, literally, dude. Like, I'd be like, oh, wait a sec. Oh, yeah, now I remember. And I'd be like, whoa, that's not right. And it's just because of all that lack of, I was anemic and everything else. The lack of oxygen getting to my brain, was causing these really weird symptoms that I was like, okay, they're literally, there's something seriously wrong here. A few years before my diagnosis, I started feeling exhausted all the time. And I got to a point where, for someone who's very in tune with their body, I got to a point where was saying to myself, I'm not the same person. Something's changed. And my wife noticed also, like, I was napping three, four, five times a day. Everybody loves a good afternoon nap, but I mean, I was napping constantly. I'd wake up at 9 o'clock, I'd drink my coffee, then I have to go back and take a nap. It was so strange. And I was trying to explain to my doctor, I feel like I have wool in my head, and maybe it's long COVID, or maybe I didn't know what it was. And so my wife continued to say, "Oh, you got to go back to the doctor. You got to go back." And through a series of blood tests and eventually finally meeting with the hematologist, they discovered that I had all this protein in my blood. My blood was like molasses, right? Which was, of course, explaining all of the weird symptoms I was getting. I couldn't run to the end of my laneway without being completely winded when I'm used to running thousands of miles on expeditions in extreme conditions. So obviously there was something wrong. And then they did that. Then they did one of those bone marrow things where they put the thing in, and my hip bone, and then got the diagnosis. By the time I got the diagnosis back, I was fully prepared. I was sure that I was going to die in 6 months. I was like, okay, I have something. Like, I've always been very in tune with my body since I've started doing it. I've been doing what I do professionally for 20 years, right? Keep that in mind. So I know how my body works. I can tell you my heart rate without looking at a heart rate monitor. Like, it's what I do as an endurance athlete. And so when I went to the doctor, the hematologist said, your blood protein's really high. This is weird. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I have cancer. Like, I just knew. And then I went home and I was talking to my wife. I said, they're going to confirm what it is. They have to do one of those bone things, bone diggy things. But I said, you know what, babe? I think I've, like, seriously, I think I'm like, this is it. Like, I seriously think this is it. And I said, well, if it is, we got to tell our kids. We'll wait till, our daughters, we'll wait till we have a final diagnosis. But mentally, in some strange way, I was actually prepared for that. I wasn't excited about it, but I was prepared that if I had 6 months left, it was going to be an incredible 6 months. Like, I was going to do so many things with my kids, whether they liked it or not. They were going all over the world with the old man. And I was just going to live life at 1,000%. And the reality is that when I did get the diagnosis, and they said, hey, good news. We want good news or the bad news first. I said, give me the good news. They said, well, you're not going to die. I said, well, that's great. That's a good start. That's a good opener. What do you got next? And they said, well, the form of lymphoma you have, we're going to treat it aggressively with chemotherapy and monoclonal therapy. And they said it's going to be 6 months of therapy, 25 days between the sessions, and there is no cure for what you got, but we think we can get you back to normal. I was like, I just won the lottery. So they said, okay, first we're going to start with the chemo, and then we're going to go to the monoclonal. And so I had the chemotherapy, and I was like, hey, this isn't so bad. Like, I mean, I didn't feel so bad. And they said, wait till you get the other stuff. So month number 2 of 6 months, I go in, and so the first day, 8 hours on the drips for the whatever the chemotherapy, and I come in the next day. They gave me the monoclonal therapy, dude. They gave me that monoclonal therapy. My throat went exposed instantly, instantly sick. So I was allergic to the stuff, and they said, well, some people are allergic. So they worked it out. I had to take all this other stuff to counteract the effects, and I would say to the nurses every time I would go back in 25 days later, I'd say, maybe you don't need to give me the monoclonal therapy. And they'd say, no, you're getting every drop, dude. And like, I lay on the couch for a couple of days. My wife would say, okay, that's enough. Get up. And that meant the clock was at 23 days, the next rounds. And I made a choice. And it was this. I'm used to being on expedition and choosing to do very difficult things. Because people ask me all the time, what do you do when it gets really tough out there? I just crossed Ellesmere Island. You can look it up on a map in the middle of winter in the Arctic this winter with my teammate Kevin. It's as far north on this planet as you can get. It's an island, horribly difficult conditions. And what do I think about when I'm out there and it's really tough? I think to myself, I chose to be here. I chose to do this. So I'm going to give this everything I got. I didn't choose cancer, it chose me. But I wasn't going to allow it to define me, nor was I going to allow it to tell me what I could and couldn't do. And because my oncologist is one of the most awesome dudes on the planet, he's a mountain biker, he races bikes, he gets what I do. He was like, look at dude, there's nothing wrong with you. Okay, your immune system, well, the immune system was like collapsed, obviously, and all that. He's like, look, you do what you need to do. So you know what I would do? I would get off the couch. I'd go for a walk. I would start with half mile down my road, and then I would get going. And then I would train for something, whether it was doing an adventure in the Arctic or going off with one of my daughters into a desert, and every month I trained myself to get as fit as I possibly could because I knew how shitty I was going to feel after that monoclonal therapy. I said, I'm going in the best fighting shape, and I would go somewhere in the world, do something epic, and then come back home and go back onto the tubes and all that stuff. And then I would go home, lay on the couch for 2 days, be sick as a dog, get up, wife poke, get up, and I would start training and I would go somewhere in the world. For 6 months, I chose to live and to not let the cancer own me. I didn't want to be treated like someone who had something wrong with them. So my daughters had cross country ski races, I would show up. My daughters had paddling races, I would show up. My wife had running races, I'd show up. And my buddies who were all like elite athletes, like I live in a town of athletes, and I could see people wanted to kid glove me a little bit. And although, like, sometimes I was showing up a day after chemo and I felt like I was going to vomit. Like, I tried to describe to somebody the physical, like the way I felt was like if I tried to pick something up, I felt nauseous in my fingertips. So I'd just be standing there and I'd be thinking, I know I'm not going to throw up, but every pore in my body feels like it wants. It was the weirdest thing I've ever felt in my life. But that people around you that just make you feel normal, even though you're going through this crazy thing. I have learned about this cancer diagnosis of any kind. If you survive it, maybe sometimes even if you don't, because some of the people I have friends of mine I know that have died from cancer. Any illness, any trauma that happens to our personal selves physically that is like let's say an illness that you especially if you overcome it is both the worst thing that can happen in your life and the best thing that can happen in your life because right away you start to appreciate the more subtle things in the day to day that before you wouldn't have even looked at. Oh, I made a great cup of coffee. I'm a big coffee person. Made a great cup of coffee today, like an espresso, and it was perfect. And it just tastes so good. And like pre-cancer, I would have been like, all right, let's go. I gotta go. I'm busy. I wouldn't even paid attention. But now I stop in every day, and I say that to my friends. I'm like, listen. I could be walking to the grocery store and get hit by a truck. You have to really slow things down to a point where you can actually be present in the moment, appreciate what you got, and be satisfied with where your life is at the moment in that day. At least find some satisfaction in it. You know what I'm saying? And be able to appreciate where you're at in your life in that moment, even though you may have lofty goals. It's not discounting those, but people have to be able to also be able to appreciate where they are in the moment because it can all be gone very quickly. The cancer and the going through the chemo and the 6 months and the blah 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 and the other end of it, and then another year after that to actually get back to completely normal. All of that helped to bring clarity to it. So I knew that before, like looking through a camera with a dirty filter, and then you take the filter off, and then it's completely clear, right? The image is clear. Now I completely understand, and I'm very comfortable. So if they came to me and said, because they check my blood every 2 months, right? Or it was every month, now it's every 2 months. And my immune system's still not 100%. I wear a mask on a plane, blah, blah, blah. Hand sanitizer all the time. I don't care. People are like, isn't that a pain in the ass? I'm like, no, are you kidding me? It's nothing. It's nothing. It's a minor inconvenience in my life that I don't even notice. If the doctor came back to me again today and said, by now, bad news, it's come back again, it would be an inconvenience. That's pretty much it. And so it's really taught me to truly appreciate where things are now and be able to say to myself, if I was to step off the planet tomorrow, would I be okay? Like, would I be happy with the day that I've just lived? You got to find that happiness in that day that you're in. Every time I see my oncologist, I say to him, you gave me my life back. And he said, but you weren't going to die. He said, I had your back. He said, you're not going to die. He said, we may have to do this again in 10 years, the whole thing. But he said, statistically, and I said, no, doc, you don't understand. You gave me my life back. Like a life for me that I love. You gave me my job back. You gave me the ability to go and do the things, to run up a mountain, to do the things I do and do it so well. I said, it's a gift to have this back. I've crossed every large desert, almost every large desert on the planet, but I love Death Valley and the Mojave Desert. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? After chemo, I trained. I said, I want to go from the most northern point in Death Valley National Park and go south about 100 miles, completely cross country to the Badwater Basin and do it in July with limited resupplies, hottest time of year. And so I went to do that 2 months after chemo finished. And I wasn't ready. And they had an anomalous windstorm where the winds were hitting me head on. It was world record heat. It was just, I had to stop. So I thought, okay, I'll come back. And then I decided to go back the following July, which was last July 24, and I was successful in going from the furthest point north to the Badwater Basin, the lowest point in North America, completely cross country, 53 hours of moving nonstop over the gnarliest terrain on the planet at like 120 Fahrenheit or whatever it was. I was seeing double. It was so hot, but I love the heat. So I did that. And then guided, did some trips, did some impossible to possible youth expeditions as well in Chile and others. And then the last big trip I did was just this past winter. I crossed the Ellesmere Island, 28 days, dragging all of me and my teammate Kevin, dragging all of our supplies across Ellesmere Island, 500 kilometers, 28 days, living out of our tents. It was epic. The greatest challenges that we face in our lives are 90% mental, and the other 10% is all in our heads. It's 100% your choice how you're going to take on that diagnosis. You reach a crossroads. You can go right or you can go left, and it is 100% your choice. And that is on every diagnosis. We have to choose to fight or give in. And then once you say, I'm going to fight, okay, that leads you down another road that has another branch on it. Are you going to fight with passion, or are you going to fight and then give it? You know what I mean? And it becomes a series of choices. And you just have to realize and accept that this is an adventure. This is a challenge. And I don't say adventure in a way that's romantic and happy. This is going to be the most difficult challenge that someone will go through in their life. And you are not choosing to do it. It's being thrust upon you. And it's your time to rise to the occasion. That's the time that you're called to stand up and do everything you possibly can. Not just for you, for everyone around you. Those that will come after you, for the people that you've met in your life that are that maybe you may meet again. It's on you to make that decision. And when you choose to go into the affirmative, which I hope everybody does, and you're going to go after this thing, is to fight with passion. Every person inside them, deep down inside them, has a capacity for a form of greatness. And maybe in their great dreams, they think they're going to be a rock star, they think they're going to be a great artist or an incredible athlete. But maybe rising to the challenge and being great means fighting this disease that you're up against. And having no idea when you come out the other end the person that you're going to be, because that's the one thing that life one thing about life that's not mysterious is that we all are in control at the end of who we are, right? We define ourselves. We don't allow things to define us. So you survive that cancer. You're not a cancer survivor. You are a person who defeated cancer.